Where'd my couch go?
I don't know.
Where'd your couch go?
I don't know. There's an armchair though. You haven't been using that couch lately, anyway.
I know, but I didn't get to say a proper goodbye. Three years. Now. Well, let's not dwell on the past. In fact, let's mix things up a bit and relax with something nice and simple. The Game Boy Advance, the pinnacle of the legendary Game Boy line. Full colour sprites, bright and vibrant game library with a variety of colours, iterations and designs, with additions to Advance like the Game Boy SP or the Game Boy Micro. But we don't talk about the Game Boy Micro. I mean, no real reason. It was just a strange idea that nobody asked for. Kinda like the 2DS. The Game Boy Advance was sort of like a portable Super Nintendo, only not quite. And Nintendo's array of games in the system were kind of strange. You'd get some odd new concepts like Mario Pinball Land and Mario vs Donkey Kong, which is one of my favourite GBA games by the way, but we'll talk about that another time. As well as new installments to classic series like Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, Kirby, Nightmare in Dreamland and The Legend of Zelda the Minish Cap, and also Metroid Fusion. Games like these really demonstrated just how impressive the Game Boy Advance was, and during this time Nintendo tried a lot with different kinds of graphics, with many games using 3D models which were then turned into low-res sprites, giving a lot of games a sort of fake 3D look. A perfect example being Mario vs Donkey Kong, which has a 3D look that's honestly blurry as hell. Why am I telling you this information? Because this is a graphics method that was very much pioneered, I'd say, by good old Rareware back when they did the original Donkey Kong Country series on the Super Nintendo, which leads me on to DK King of Swing. The interesting thing about King of Swing is that it uses Rareware character designs, but in a very non-Rareware art style, and it's very jarring. DK King of Swing is a hard game to sum up, but to put it simply, it's a game about climbing, or swinging. It's a beautifully simple concept that works perfectly for the Game Boy Advance. But first, the delightful plot that is King of Swing.
Tomorrow's the day we finally hold that competition. Whoever gets the most medals will be the jungle hero.
Okay.
Now these medals are important, so don't let anybody steal them. I'll just keep them in here for safe storage.
I guess I'm the jungle hero now. Since you chumps don't need these medals, I'll just take them all for myself. And don't even think of trying to get them back, monkey prince. See ya.
Now we can't hold our tournament. We have to get those medals back from King K. Rool.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not what I'd call a serious plot. What they're doing is holding some tournament called the Jungle Jam, which apparently requires multiple bronze, silver and gold medals, but really it's just a means to an end. They needed a story just so they could explain why the gameplay is so different. And speaking of gameplay, the most immediately striking thing about King of Swing is the gameplay. Just look at it. The levels are made up of these dotted squares, which I can only describe as pegboards or something, and you clamber up them as Donkey Kong, and the easiest way to explain the controls is that you control DK's hands individually with the L and R buttons on the GBA. You grab onto a peg with an arm and start spinning, or swinging. Hey. If you're holding on with your left hand, you'll spin counterclockwise, and holding on with your right hand, you spin clockwise. And when you let go, you get launched. There's no real physics or momentum to the spinning, so you can grab on for just a split second and still get launched as far as you would if you actually did a full spin. I would class King of Swing as a platformer with a twist. You make your way through 5 worlds, each with a few levels. A jungle world, a Wild West world, aqua world, ice world, and a final world on King K. Rool's ship, the K Cruiser 3. Each world having a different theme, which are very typical and not worth talking about too in depth honestly, as the game's setting itself isn't very important. It's clear to me that they wanted to make this game focus on the gameplay, but obviously they needed some kind of setting, befitting of the Donkey Kong series, so instead of some kind of Rareware style island jungle, they built it much like a Mario game with only no lava world. How will we ever live without a lava world? Most levels are broken up into a few sections where you'll climb to the top of the room, then pass through to another screen before hitting an exit sign, which is the end of the level. Since it's a Game Boy game, it's not the most complex thing ever, but they do find some interesting ways to mix things up. Primarily through the design of the levels and their obstacles, which also sort of tie into the theme of the world. For instance, in the Wild West world, one of the levels is based off a mine, and inside you'll find levers you need to pull by grabbing on with DK's left hand and swinging around and pulling the lever with his right hand, then rinse and repeat. It's a clever use of the swinging and grabbing, and it's easy to perform, even though in certain situations grabbing onto individual pegs can be tough. Even though the hitboxes on pegs can be quite forgiving, it's a game all about precision and a little bit of luck, since sometimes you're just going to fall because you're not oriented correctly or your attempt to grab was poorly timed. Another great obstacle is the conveyor belts. There's just something fun about them. They're really easy to climb since instead of having pegs like most obstacles, the entire surface of the conveyor is grabbable, which makes ascending much easier but makes attacking enemies and boxes a bit awkward, and this is something which ties into my biggest frustration with the game overall. The pause before you attack. So you can do a sort of lunge attack where you'll somersault in a straight line. You do this by grabbing on something with both arms and holding it for a moment to let it charge. Or you can hold on to something with, say, the L button and hold the R button while spinning, and it'll charge while spinning. Then, when DK starts to flash, let go of L and R at the same time and you'll dart in whatever direction you're facing. And the pause before you attack can cause so much trouble, especially during bosses since it leaves you totally vulnerable as you wait for the attack to charge. It makes me wonder why you can't just tap L and R to instantly attack, or even allocate it to another button, but given that this is the GBA, we are limited with buttons. L and R are obviously used for the grabbing, so they're taken, and the A and B buttons are also taken. A is for invincibility, and B is used to heal yourself. Pretty strange, I know, but those are the reason you see DK picking up all those bananas and stockpiling them down in the bottom right corner. You can hold a maximum of 300 bananas at any time, and they actually serve a purpose since both healing and becoming invincible use 20 bananas each, which doesn't seem like a lot considering you can hold 300 at any time, but in order to get 300 you'd have to go out of your way to farm a bunch by playing a level over and over. Either way, A and B are taken, and I don't think attacking with the select button would be a good idea since people really hate using the select button for gameplay stuff. Now while King of Swing may seem simple, let me tell you it gets difficult later on. Levels become increasingly more challenging, requiring more skill and precision. The King K. Rool airship levels in particular are brutal and took me ages to finally get past. They have some grueling obstacles, throwing in spinning pegs which make DK spin faster but launch him much further. But this just requires even better timing on the player's part. But make it past all the levels and at the end you're treated to a boss fight, and this goes for every world in the game. The bosses start simple. You'll climb on pegs and launch yourself at them to attack, but mix things up. I really like the Aqua World boss, which is this bony fish, snake, eel thing, which requires you to grab onto its tail end and spin, which smacks it into the spikes in the wall. This boss demonstrates one of the nice graphical distinctions of this game. A lot of the enemies and the player characters in this game are made up of multiple sprites layered onto each other, that change, rotate and move according to the orientation and other factors, and it works really well. DK in particular looks great in this game. His arms moving independently of his body at times, and the way his legs sway and move based on his orientation, not to mention his tie, which is always reacting to how DK moves, usually pointing either up or down whether he's moving or not. Now, strangely enough, this game actually has a multiplayer mode, or a sort of competitive mode. Now, you can either play this alone against CPU characters, or with up to 3 friends who happen to have their own GBA, their own copy of DK King of Swing, and a gajillion Game Boy Advance link cables, although apparently you can play with just one copy of the game. But I don't know, man. I mean, do you think I have a GBA link cable? Because I don't. It was a dark time for multiplayer games. I mean, the multiplayer is neat though, as it lets you play with a few other characters, including Diddy Kong, Dixie Kong, Funky Kong, Wrinkly Kong, Kremling, King K. Rool, and Bubbles from the Clue Clue Land series. A red blob, which shoots a sonic ray and collects rupees, makes the Mario jump noise, and swings round poles.
Whoa. What even is that thing?
You and me. Oh, we're just,
Sorry, what?
Never mind. The multiplayer games, while interesting, aren't worth much. There's a climbing race, which is just as simple as it sounds. Climb to the top of the stage, and whoever does so first wins. There's Obstacle Race, which is the same as Climbing Race except with the occasional row of boxes blocking your path, which you need to attack to get past, or you could wait until someone else breaks the box then jump in front of them. Attack Battle, where you simply need to attack the other players as many times as possible, which isn't very fun, again due to the pause when waiting for an attack to charge simply being frustrating, since it leaves you so vulnerable and means timing attacks becomes more about luck than anything. No skill involved here, it's a mess. And finally, Barrel Blast, which is similar to Attack Battle, but this time it's how many barrels you can destroy. The one who destroys the most wins, and they're all fine and dandy, but they aren't exactly fun. Not to mention with the climbing races, it feels like it's more about the characters you pick than actually playing skill, since characters all have their own independent stats, jump and attack. Although in saying that, it doesn't actually feel like it makes too much of a difference. You can pick the character with the smallest jump skill, for instance. In this case, it's good old Funky Kong. Hey dudes. Bodacious. Even though he's the slowest in terms of his jump skill, you can still win just by doing the same thing you would do with any other character. Mash L and R alternatively to maximise your vertical movement. The multiplayer is a fun little distraction if you finish the main adventure mode and are looking for a bit more King of Swing. Of course, you could play through the game again and try to 100% it.
Why don't you complete it 100%?
Why would I do that? Do I look like some kind of one-man complete squad or some shit?
I picture complete squad looking different, you know, with a certain waifu.
Exactly. But there you have it, DK King of Swing. And while it was a nice distraction from the gut-wrenching pain of loss, I now need to go back to what everyone wants. Wii games. Thank you all so much for watching. November was kind of a hectic month for me, and as such this video took way longer to come out than originally planned. But let's get to it. First of all, thank you to my band of patrons. Your continued support helps a lot, and I'll be rolling out more exclusive content for you guys very soon. Now then, this time I want to recommend my Metroid Other M review. You could say you're authorized to enjoy it. And as well as that, how about my top 10 hopes I had for Zelda Breath of the Wild? Which hopes were realised and which ones weren't? That's for you to find out. Lastly, I'm interested to see the kind of videos people would like to see from me, so if you have any game suggestions, feel free to pop them in the comments. Not restricted to any console, just have at it and I'll maybe consider it. That's all for now, thanks for watching.